Okay, well, for today anyway, I just wanted to cover three more uh, points here under this topic. One is manufacturing and earth use. The other is the illusion created by advertising. And the last is progressive taxation. Now, in terms of manufacturing and earth use, one of the problems that was created by manufacturing. Now, of course, speaking of Thomas Jefferson, you go back to this idea that there was some sort of an issue involved in what direction the United States should go in. Should it become primarily an agrarian nation, or should it primarily become a manufacturing nation? And the Federalist position was that it should be both, but that manufacturing was very important. Otherwise, the United States would wind up just exporting raw materials, and this way it could become more self-sufficient, would have less need for importation and things like that. Of course, the Federalist Party did not survive Thomas Jefferson's politicking, and however, manufacturing did become an important part of the United States economy, obviously. And one of the problems was that it exacerbated what is known as the Malthusian axiom, which is that I don't have it memorized, something like the Earth's ability to provide sustenance for mankind is less than mankind's proclivity towards procreation, or something like that. In other words, the Earth can't keep up with the rate of reproduction. Obviously there's different ways of taking care of that, but when you start importing people, whether it's slaves or importing immigrants as cheap labor, which occurred with manufacturing, what it exacerbated was not only a population explosion, but it predetermined what land use would be. Because if you're primarily dealing with manufacturing, you don't have to have acreage to grow vegetables and things like that. So a large part of the U.S. economy was created by these people, immigrants and so on and so forth, surrendering any sort of right that they had to land use, to the use of land for their own sustenance. So this is where a large part of this problem came into being, where people had to rely on private businesses to provide sustenance, so that they'd have a manufacturing job, wages. This is where the whole labor union thing comes into play. Give them a decent wage so they could have a house, build a house, provide for their family. And there you had another problem, because these people are like, well, we got a job now, we could just fuck like crazy, have 10 or 12 kids, live in some little small apartment somewhere. It created a lot of problems. And it does affect what we have as a result of that. So the way I look at that situation in terms of agriculture, the way that evolved, and the way that manufacturing evolved, and planning and zoning and things like that, is a part of evolution. It's not something that was absolutely necessary, or that one way was right and the other way wasn't. It was just something that happened. And it doesn't have to be conserved. It doesn't have to stay like that. What you want to do is you want to do what's best for the people first, rather than what's best for business. Because what we've already discussed is what's best for business is usually not what is best for people. Now, the other part of this thing is as soon as you say socialist or as soon as you say people first and, you know, business takes the rumble seat or whatever, as people start thinking to themselves, oh no, we're going to look like those awful videotapes that we used to see when Ronald Reagan was president, the grayness of the Soviet Union, empty grocery shelves. Oh, terrible. Everyone drunk, drinking vodka, overcrowded apartment buildings, you know. And it's kind of funny because there's this guy. I turned the television on the other day and I saw this guy. He had this haircut. He looked like some guy that came out of the 1960s and was working at McDonald's or the Carvel counter or something. And he happened to be the governor of New Jersey, and they're making this big deal. He's not running. He's not going to be president. I'm thinking, are you serious? This guy looks like he just came from he was like the counter guy at Carvel ice cream or something. The guy's the governor of New Jersey, you know. Now, I could remember driving through New Jersey. I never hung out much in New Jersey. But I can remember driving through there to go to New York, and there's like these big iron things all over the place. Iron cranes, iron railroad cars, rusty iron just laying all over the, you know. And I never knew much about New Jersey. I had a crush on a girl for a while from New Jersey, and she was telling me how bad Patterson was. And she was showing me some photographs and videos. I couldn't believe it. So I'm thinking to myself, yeah, this guy's the governor where shit like this is happening. Nothing is improving. It's only getting worse. Well, it makes perfect sense that the GOP would want him to be president. Make the whole goddamn United States this way, you know, as long as the people that have maintain what they have, you know, so what with everybody else? And that's very similar to what you have. Now, this is an important thing to remember, is what you see on television, what you see on advertising is an illusion. You're not going to have these things. You're never going to have a Cadillac. You know, some people might have a Cadillac or have these things, but there's going to be serious consequences of it, you know. Maybe they're going to fail, they're going to go bankrupt or something because they're living beyond their means. But to a great extent, the things that you see that are designed to make you want these things, contrary to the Four Freedoms speech. I think it was the last speech that Roosevelt gave. One of the four freedoms was the freedom from want. You know, well, he died, and look what the United States did. They went apeshit with advertising, make you want everything, make you want things that you're not going to ever have. You know, so when you start talking about gray and things like that, you know, think of Paterson, New Jersey. Think of places like that are dirty and filthy. You know, people romanticize about New York. New York, like, you know, it's one of the filthiest places that there is. So advertising creates an illusion, and what the illusion is an aesthetic. And if what you want is an aesthetic and it makes you feel better, I mean, this is all you have to do to realize this. Stop watching television, and most of all, stop reading magazines. You know, and just like look and see what you have. And you will see the distinction between things that you think you have that are just an illusion. It's an aesthetic. You could have that through art. You could have that through art. You could have that through theater. When you want to have an aesthetic, you go to the theater. Think of all of the carpenters, the electricians making sets, putting up lights, actors, actresses, managers, booking agents, florists, so on and so forth. It's a huge job creation function, whatever you want to call it, that has a useful purpose. It's creating an aesthetic. Instead of you buying some Rupert Murdoch product, you go to a theater. You know, that's just one aspect of this. But another thing with this, all of this leads into is this idea of progressive taxation. Now, a lot of people have been talking about, well, we're going to tax the rich. They got so much goddamn money, it's going to solve all of our revenue problems. Well, it's not, because 1% of the population is a small number. And you could raise a rather dramatic amount of revenue, but it's not going to solve all of these revenue problems. The only way you're going to do that is by taxing the middle class. You know, everybody's talking about the middle class is, you know, the poor things, oh, you know. But if you're going to tax, that's where you're going to get your tax revenue from. I'm not saying don't tax rich people, but you should understand why you're taxing rich people. The reason you're taxing rich people is so that somebody that makes designer blue jeans for $5,000 a pair, okay, if there's going to be people that have so much extra money, you know, they buy champagne, caviar, whores, Bentleys, whatever, and $5,000 blue jeans, you're going to be wearing some sort of, you know, imports from the Philippines. So a progressive tax system prevents that from happening. You know, I got this thing where this little scenario with McDonald's. There's a McDonald's stand, and some rap guy or football player or something goes through there with a limousine, and he's got all of these women in the back, and he buys Big Macs for everybody, and they charge him $1,250. You know, and all of a sudden it's like, well, geez, they only have to stay open for him. And then after a while, the guy made enough money, so he's going to retire, and he's going to get his own limousine and all this other stuff. And there's this woman standing outside. She's saying, I want my Happy Meal. You know, and it's like it's not there. So that sort of thing about giving tax breaks to rich people, it doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. All it does is it allows them to have luxuries that are, you know, nice to have, that we'd like to have, but you're never going to have them. So, and taxing them is not going to give you those things. Nothing is going to give you those things. They're illusions. And once you realize that they're illusions, then you're not going to miss them. When somebody says, well, if you listen to this Blazing Tommy D character and socialism and all of this stuff, you're never going to have that stuff. You don't have it now. It's just the way that it is.